I do want to make a quick mention before I get going here. A very dear and old friend of mine, Rick DeVincent, reached out to me just today, just an hour or so ago. And Rick was the guitar player in my very first band, Undone. We grew up together in Melrose, Massachusetts. He lives now out in Dallas, Texas, with his wife and his family, or his kids live, I think, in California, his grown daughters. But um, Rick is one of my oldest and dearest friends, a great guitar player, singer, songwriter, and an even better friend. And he sent me today the link to his latest song, um, "The Time Is Now," available on Spotify. And I'm just throwing it out there just ahead of Denny coming on, because this song was so great. I loved it so much, and I just want to turn you guys on to it as well. So again, the song is called "The Time Is Now." The artist is my friend Ricky DeVincent. You can find it on Spotify. Check it out. It's really, really great. Rick is a super talented guy and a super great guy. And I'm proud to say that we played in our first band together, and both of us set foot on stage on our very first gigs together. So all the way back to 1974, as I was 13 and he was 11, what a history. So really, really proud of that. So check it out. Ricky DeVincent, "The Time Is Now." And check out all his music. I think he has a lot of stuff up on Spotify. So with that, again, I want to welcome everybody to episode 65 of Live from My Drum Room. And without any further delay or ado, please welcome my very good friend with his
Does it work?
with his wool hat, Denny Tedesco. Oh, that looks great. Yeah.
Can you read it? I can't see. It's
It
backwards
says,
for me.
no, I can read it. It says, let's
get lit.
Let's get lit. Okay, I get it.
There you go.
I love it.
I'm gonna hide the hair there. Should I just go this?
That's way cooler. I like that better.
Okay.
Denny, I could have
so
sworn
cold.
I know. I'm sorry about how cold you are. I could have sworn I had a Wrecking Crew T-shirt, and I looked for it this morning, and I think I definitely have a hat. But
yeah, you know what? I'm gonna send it to you. I felt like a chump by wearing a Wrecking Crew shirt to this. I felt like I did it so long. It was like this guy's a chump. He keeps wearing the same damn shirt.
No, man, I would wear that all the time. I'd be so proud of that. Wearing that shirt. You kidding me? Wow.
It's so funny. I feel like this is like you've made the wrong call, Johnny, because I looked at all the police people you've interviewed and went, why am I here?
Are you kidding? No way, man. No way. It's such an honor to have you here. I'm going to tell you, and I've told you this before, and I'm going to tell everybody who's watching, I just love you so much. I just adore you, man. Yeah. I just, I remember the day Hal Blaine called and said, that voice, "Hey, John, it's Hal." He said, Tommy's son Denny's putting together this documentary on the Wrecking Crew, and I'm trying to remember. It must have been not long after you started, sometime in the late '90s, I think.
Yeah, was my dad still? I don't think my dad would have been around. Maybe. I mean, we started in '96, but he died in '97. So I don't know. It's funny because it's the relationships I built over those 20 something years were ridiculous, because I became closer to the people like Don Randy than my father probably was, because I was, because I stayed with Don. I'm still with Don, but that was like 20 years where my father maybe had a good 15 years of work with him, it's wild.
It's crazy when you look at it like that. I never even thought of that. You're right. I mean, and the amount of work that your dad did in that time is like probably, I mean, it's almost immeasurable, but I know what you mean. In actual years though, you've had a longer relationship with Don than your dad.
Yeah.
I never thought of that.
Yeah. Crazy. So,
well, congratulations. I'm good, man. I'm good. My wife and I are just trying to navigate our way through the holidays with all the latest and greatest shit going on out there. But yeah. How about you guys?
It's
How you
good.
holding up?
It's
Good.
good. We're just finally, this is it. End of the year. We're going to pretend to not to work and just try to calm down.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, I definitely want to talk about what I think you're working on right now, the immediate family documentary.
I,
I'd love to get to that, but I just want to like there's so much to talk about with the wrecking crew and just with you and your dad. And you know, we've never really got into like the nuts and bolts of like what it must have been like for you as a kid growing up with Tommy Tedesco as your dad. You know, I mean, I know you've talked about this with a lot of people.
yeah,
I feel like our relationship had a lot to do with Hal because Hal was our mutual kind of friend,
yeah.
you know,
Your
and
stepfather.
kind of,
That's it.
yeah, yeah. But I was thinking like what it must have been like to see your dad go off to work in the morning and knowing that he was going to, you know, play on a hit song or maybe five hit songs that day, you
I
know?
had no idea. No, but the difference is, the truth is, had no idea. None of
Yeah.
us. I mean, dad went to work like any other dad. If you don't know that it's kind of like different, my friend's father across the street, his father was an accountant, and my
Hmm.
father was a musician. I didn't know there was a difference, in terms of work and occupation. But no, dad just, he went to work and that was it. And I always tell people, instead of a saw and a drill in the trunk, he had a banjo, a Telecaster, an acoustic, and an amp, and that was his tools.
Yeah.
But never, it wasn't until the 70s, because I'm born in 61, that I started realizing things were different. I think when one of the kids said, "Your dad's on the Partridge Family album," his name's on it. And oh, that's cool. I didn't realize. And then he would, if he was doing TV shows or something, like not Bonanza, but more like, I would do Chips and things like that, or
Yeah.
Barnaby Jones or one of those shows. I would basically, on like off school days, I go with him, but it was boring, watching music being done for a film and not knowing how cool it was now. But no, we had no idea. I mean, maybe other kids did, maybe Michelle and, Hal's, you know, I think certain parents included their kids more, involved them more, maybe sometimes brought them in the studios more, but not my dad. He kept it separate.
Yeah. Well, that's maybe he respect that, right? He wanted to do that. He wanted to sort of separate church and state, so to speak. And
It totally, it's funny because I asked that about my mom, because, there's legendary stories out. My mom and my aunt and uncle went to see Strangers in the Night, being recorded, because Frank wanted a audience. I said, did he ever take you to those other dates, like Peggy Lee or anything? He goes, no, mom, dad always said a plumber doesn't take his wife to work, and he was joking, but it's true. I mean, when you guys go to work, you guys are musicians, you're going to work. You're
right.
not there to, it's not a social event. It becomes a social event, obviously, with musicians, but it's not that's a job.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Sometimes the
Exactly.
job is the hang, and that's what I learned also, is the hang is sometimes can be more important than the music you just created,
Yeah.
because you know what, you just met someone that's going to take you, you guys are going to work together for the next 20 years now. So
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And so when he'd come home from work, did he ever say, I did this, I did a Monkeys
sometimes,
TV show today or something,
no,
or no?
no, it's funny. Again, it was weird because the only times, again, in the 70s, probably because I was a little more inquisitive. I didn't see my father play guitar at home, don't forget, until 1976. And because he was, starting to do his jazz thing, his own jazz albums. And he
Yeah.
hadn't done that since the early 60s. So I was too young then. So I never really saw, he never practiced at home. He was practicing 12, 14 hours a day. So that's the last thing he ever did, is pull out a guitar and start playing.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until later I started becoming interested, seeing him do his albums and going, and getting a radio player, and then certain movies would come up and we would talk about it because now I'm an adult, late teens, early, and that started getting excited because he was excited.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the other thing. I think he started getting excited with certain projects, let's say with John Williams or James Horner or something like that. And then, what got him excited? I think what brought it was remember he was doing those articles for Guitar Player magazine,
Yeah.
and that was late 70s. He started doing this article called for Guitar Players, Studio Log, I think it was called, and it was really popular. And what he did is he would take a date that he was just on, and if there was something to write about, he'd take the music and he'd basically talk about it. But he talked about it with I mean, I can't even. It was hilarious. Some of the things he wrote about were very funny, but he never took himself too seriously,
Yeah.
with a lot of that stuff. But that's when and also the seminars he was doing with around the country and with that MI Musicians Institute, which was GIT. I think the kids got him more excited about music, and that's what really got him back.
Yeah.
In terms of caring, not caring. You know what I mean? It was just something that they pushed him into. They asked him, "Why don't you play, live?" And he had no answer for it. In the early days, yeah, it's hard to book a gig. You're going to make $50 if you're lucky at a jazz gig. Versus for $2,000. So he's not going to take a chance.
Well, I was just going to say a couple of quick things. One of my biggest regrets, I was working at a music store in Boston called EU Wurlitzer from the late 70s to the mid 80s. And I
Right.
want to say the year was 1980 that your dad came in and did a clinic. And clinics were pretty new at the time. And
Yeah.
all the guitar players that worked in the shop, and this was a real pro store. It was the equivalent of like a
Yeah.
Manny's Music. Yeah. And all the guitar players that worked there were so excited because Tommy Tedesco was coming in and they all knew who he was. And I don't know that at that time, I don't think they'd coined the phrase wrecking crew, but they were like, this is the guy that plays on all the records, all the TV shows. And I stupidly, being a drummer, 19 or 20 years old, went home after work, didn't stick
Yeah.
around for the clinic. And people talked about that. I swear, as God is my
Yeah.
witness, Denny, for years after that, how great it was. And most of what the guys talked about, besides the information, was how funny your dad was. They just said
Yeah.
he had people in stitches. So I'll fast forward the other day, literally yesterday or the day before, I'm talking to Rick Murata, and I
Yeah.
mentioned that you were going to be here today. And the first thing Rick said was, "Oh man, his dad was amazing." He said, one of the funniest guys he's one of the funniest guys I've ever known, besides being like an amazing musician. He said, he was just hilarious, just a great guy to be around. Just his vibe was so
That's very
positive.
cool.
Yeah. So
That's really cool. I mean, and it's funny because I get that all the time from people like yourself and any other people. The same thing, and well, if you've seen the film, which you have, that footage is from Musicians Institute 1981 seminar,
yeah.
and that was kind of like I knew I always had that in the pocket making the film, but I knew that was not just funny and lighthearted, but his stories meant something. I mean, there was a point to a story, even if there was a joke on the end of it. There, and that's what he loved sharing. It wasn't don't ask him to teach you guitar because he would always say the kid I'm trying to teach is better than I am. He was very humble that way. But he studio musician. He could talk forever about it.
Yeah. There's so many funny things. And talking about, for everybody watching at home, if you haven't seen the film that Denny directed, The Wrecking Crew, then it's available. You can watch it on Netflix still. Is
I
it still there?
no, it's not on
It's
Netflix, but I'm excited. But wait, sent me a note the other day. It's on HBO now, HBO Max.
oh, fantastic. Even
Yeah,
better.
so
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
We'll find out in March if I get a check. We'll see. Like, I hope
Well,
so.
I can
Oh, all
watch
right.
it.
So here's the thing. All your audience, go to HBO Max. I don't care if you've seen it before or whatever. Just give it a thumbs up. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I need for
Yeah,
Christmas.
please. Please do that. And I'll do the same thing. Yeah. I've watched it so many times. You were so nice to send me, I think even before the DVD was final,
Oh,
you were
yeah.
sending
You
me.
saw it years before we finished it.
Yeah. And, but I can watch it over and over and I can hear the stories over and over because they're so great. And I know I'll mess these up, but there are a couple that your dad tells. Um, there's one in particular and please cut me
Yeah.
off
Tell
and,
me.
and,
Oh,
and
oh,
correct it if I
oh,
don't, but it has to do with the wrecking crew going in to do this really legit into a soundstage, maybe at Universal, and doing like a they were doing a movie and they were doing the score for a movie and there was a composer who put music in front of them and said, all right, now this is sheet
oh, okay.
music
All right.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
That's the Disney story.
Disney, okay,
Right,
I
so
was
that was right because Hal tells that story. Hal said it was right, because at the time in the late '60s, there was still about it was there was still that, oh, you guys do records,
yeah,
there was that. Well, the guy at Disney needed some rock and roll for this movie. It was I can't remember. It was whatever the movie was. So what they did is they got rid of all the rest of the legit players, the strings and all that, and they brought in Hal and Dad and whoever it was, the combo. And he goes, all right, guys, I'm going to lay down the music. We're going to take, the click tracker and we're going to slow it down so you guys can learn it. And he goes, and then they counted it out and they just went boom, 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 and finished it. And that was it. And then the guy was like blown away by, how'd you guys do that? And my father says, oh, we practice a lot during the day, you know. So my father had no shame. I mean, you know, the greatest thing about, I wish my father had given me, he didn't give me the music gene. I can tell you that. But I wish he had given me the sarcasm, the how to bury someone without them knowing they've been buried. And that's the thing I wish he was so good at it. He was so good at it.
yeah,
He could insult the shit out of you, with tongue in cheek. I mean, if he didn't like you, you were really in trouble.
yeah.
But he knew how to do it without, you know,
Oh,
he was, I mean, Don Randy was telling me a story recently. Um, these guys go to work and it's like anybody else. There's 3 o'clock. God, we're going to get off of work 10 minutes early. That's great because I got to get to the next gig. And mentally, you guys as musicians, it's not, and that's the difference. I've been telling you this because we'll talk about how it's different from the next group of musicians, the Danny Kochmars, the Lelands, and the Russell and Kunkles and all that. I mean, those guys
yeah,
come in later. My dad was boom, 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 boom. There was music and there was music business, he would say. So you had to combine the two. You have to know when and what. So this day, it's music business. He's got to get in, he's got to get out. And it's like quarter to 3 before, and they run this whole thing, and it's perfect. The leader says, great, gosh, go home, we're done. And Jimmy Haskell, the great arranger, starts basically kissing ass. And he says, you know what? I think we could do another one. We could do another one. I feel it could be. And he's basically sucking up to the leader. And the leader's going, no, Jimmy, we got it. It's all good. It's all good. And he goes, and they're doing, and at this point, Hal's got his shit away. Dad's got his guitars in the case. They're walking out. And no, all right, Jimmy, we'll do one more. So they sit down, and Don says, your dad sits down, opens the chart up again, and he goes, and just about to go, and Jimmy's doing the countdown. He goes, Jimmy, I'm bar 14. Did you want it like this, or do you want it like this? Don't do it like that. The way you, and they go, oh my God, he's doing this. He's going to take him down this road. And just every time he's about, you go, but how about bar 35? And he just takes him to this, to where there's no time left to do a take. And they're just dying, he says, in the back. They're just, because they know. And Jimmy has no idea my father took him for a ride.
Oh,
And that's
that's
the kind of shit I love the most.
yeah, me too. Me too. When I hear those stories, yeah, and Hal was the master at telling those stories. He
Oh, it's
became,
so good.
yeah, he was, he had a million of them,
Hal was the greatest storyteller. You know, do you remember how many there was if how many times you'd be hanging out with Hal and it'd be in a restaurant? This is for the folks that didn't get to hear Hal or hang with him long enough. He'd be telling a story or a joke, and his jokes could go for 5 minutes. And just as he gets to the punchline, a waitress will walk up to him and say, "So can I get you anything?" And he's like, "God damn it!" Pissed off. He was
Yeah,
always pissed because the waitress stepped on his line.
yeah, yeah.
He'd
His
lose his
timing got
shit.
thrown off. Yeah. Oh my
Oh,
God,
he'd
I
lose
know.
his shit.
And you're right
Uh,
too. I mean, he could tell a joke for 5 minutes, and if he didn't get interrupted by the waitress, he could hold it all that time. You know what I mean? He
oh
could
yeah.
he could hold your attention, and he'd do a voice, or he'd do something to
Oh yeah.
embellish it. Yeah. Oh my God, I know. Well,
I mean,
speaking of Hal,
yeah,
I was gonna just say the last time I saw you was at his 90th birthday party, and
yeah,
I
crazy.
I know. I tell people this story. It's kind of like a sort of a bittersweet
Yeah,
Charlie
I was
Watts
just going to
story
use the word.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
So
I
Charlie was there. Jim Keltner came.
yeah,
Chad came.
yeah,
I mean, there's so many people there. And I don't know if we talked about this because Don Randy and I, the planning of it with his with Michael, his nephew, we were all planning this birthday party, and it was like, I was sick, but not letting everybody know. I mean, we didn't know how bad it was or whatever, but also we didn't know Hal didn't really like. He would. We just didn't think he was going to stay there. We thought, all right, we've got to get him to stay at least the one set because everybody's coming to celebrate. Please, so we're
yeah.
worried about him staying the whole set and going home, you know, and because me, it didn't feel well, whatever. He closed the place. Don was gone. I was gone. He was still signing autographs. I mean, it was
Wow.
like everybody was gone. He was the last one to walk out,
Oh,
you know, and you always think, I was thinking about this last night, and I'm sure you got this too. Um, and this is weird. I'm just thinking about this because this has hit me last night. I was thinking about my parents and go, what if God or whoever gave you that chance to have 5 more minutes with someone? What would you ask them? And
man.
and
Yeah.
I could not come up. I'd be tongue tied because you always think about your family, your friends you've lost. You go, oh, I wish I would have asked him that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
truthfully, put it there, it's wild.
Right.
You
It
know?
is. I know. I don't know what if I could see my parents again. I don't know. It's like one of those things that maybe spontaneously I'd know what to say, but right now it's kind of like where would I even like how would I even start?
Yeah,
Where would I even start with
yeah.
it? It's yeah, it's
And how was that guy? I mean, how was he was after my father passed in '97, and I befriended really became friends with Al and Don. Those two really kept me going on the dock. For those who don't know, the doc I started in '96 when my father was passing away, and I quickly put them. I put Don and Carol and Plaz Johnson at a round table in the studio, and that was our first day shooting. And then he died right after that, and I couldn't get the film made, and I kept shooting and shooting, and it wasn't until 10, 12 years later that we actually got it into festivals. I think my wife was thinking I was nuts, and we just finally cut a film. And then it was 2008, but we didn't get, we still had over $500,000 to pay off for the licensing. So but all those years, Don and Hal just kept me going.
yeah.
When shit went down, they could pick me up. It's like a great relationship and a wife and a husband, you know what I mean? Or,
Yeah. Yep.
each other are up and down, up and down. Hopefully you're both not down at the same time.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. I mean, he Hal absolutely adored you and loved you, and I know Don does, and it's, but you know, at the same time, God bless you for like getting it over the finish line, and the monumental task that that was, financially,
Yeah.
mentally, everything, you know, to give all of us this amazing documentary, because it's just so great and so timeless.
I was very lucky, and and you and I, we talked about this in the past, and we've seen it in the past where I was lucky when I started interviewing these guys. Dad was 67 when he passed, which is bizarre. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm 60 now. It's like, oh my God, I have 68, so they were all in their 60s.
Yeah.
And so their minds were still there. I mean, and I don't mean that in a bad sense. They were sharper.
Yeah,
We all
absolutely.
start losing it. And so they were also, what the great thing is, they were sharper, but they weren't in the game anymore. And I say that meaning like the guys didn't have to play the game of business, bullshit business. So they didn't care what they said. And my father never cared what he said anyway, so it didn't matter there. But no, everybody was, they didn't hold back in being truthful about their business, the relationships and stuff. And that made it why it worked. If I interviewed them in their 30s, you don't get that because you're still playing that,
Yeah.
what should I say?
Right.
And if you
Yeah.
get them in their 80s, you're going to get a lot of stuff that it's going a different way. I mean, that was the thing is like we hear stories like, wait a minute, Hal, you said that was a bullshit story before when someone else told it. It's like, oh my God. But I was so lucky, and the thing is, people say, "Oh, you had such." What was it? Herb Alpert on an interview. My name came up on Mark Maron's interview with him. And he goes, "Oh my God, he's a pit bull, but he won't let go." And it was a great compliment. I took it as a compliment. And the reason
Yeah.
that I didn't let go, I have something missing that all of you have, and meaning every musician out there, you've practiced an instrument, you've gotten to a point where you're at, and you just never gave up. And I saw that in my father. I saw that in all my friends are great musicians. I saw that in writers. When I was a kid, I wanted to write scripts. I did a few and that was it. I wasn't a writer. A writer writes every day. A musician plays every day. And when I got to the Wrecking Crew, I had all this footage and I was like, what if I don't want this on my tombstone as oh, there's another notch. You know what I mean? It's another project I never finished. And we all have a lot, but this one was like intense. So when I got to that point of getting it out into the festivals, and it did extremely well in 08 and 09, a lot of awards. And people would say, you did it, you did it. I said, yeah, but. And now I knew I had a film that was really well accepted, but I just put my family in danger in a weird way because now I've spent all this money. And there was like, okay, there was a line drawn and I passed that line. Now I got to keep going.
Yeah.
And that's when we kept going. And for the next 5 years, we kept trying to figure out raising money because no one would help us, if you remember,
I do. Yeah.
and it was hard. But that's what it is. The musicians got me there by the drive. That's
Yeah.
the only thing,
But that's such a key point, Denny, what you just said, because you had this amazing film more or less in the can, but you were still a $500,000. What people didn't
and
understand, I knew that, you told me that, and was, it truly wasn't going to see the light of day until you were able to overcome that major
no,
hurdle. And
exactly. And, people didn't understand. There was so much, to be, people, this is the biggest problem that all of you have now as musicians and writers. People don't accept music as to be paid for. It's something, oh yeah, it's free, and it's like, guys, people made a living making music and this is what we bought it. And So when there was, I had no problem paying off licenses, and then the musicians union, there were contracts. They were on contracts, and technically, maybe I didn't have to pay for it because it was a documentary, but I wanted to pay for it. And so that was the biggest thing, is raise money for the musicians contracts and the labels and the publishers. And, people would say, oh, they're holding you up for ransom. No, they're not. The labels and the publishers, I got to say, they came through. They gave me a great pricing and everything. It was about economics. Investors thought there's no way this is going to make this much when it's going to cost this much. And that's what got me, we had to get to the point where it doesn't cost anybody anything,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's it. Cost
Wow.
me. But
But thank you for clarifying that. That's great information, for me, for everybody to know that. That's,
it wasn't,
you
yeah, it
wanted,
wasn't, no, there were no bad guys in this story. I mean, there
yeah.
really weren't. I mean, there were a few, let's say off the air, but there really weren't. There wasn't like, Wall Street Journal did an article on us, on the film, and they were trying to really push it that way, about me against the music, they're
Mhm.
like David and Goliath. But I said, first of all, I said, please don't do that, because I'm not done with my licensing. I don't want, that to be, and it's not. It really wasn't. And if it wasn't for a publisher, a bug, um, you know, she was the one that said to me, you have to come back and renegotiate with us, because the original negotiation I did in a way, she goes, it's too high. Meaning you'll never get the money to raise, you'll never raise enough money, because I really thought, if I give you this much money,
Yeah.
she goes, and she's the one that said, send me that contract. And she rewrote it, made it a little harder for her, meaning publishers. And she was just being legit. And she goes, okay, now go get everybody else signed off. And for the next 2 years, from 11 to 13, I kept getting publishers sign off. I pay them. Labels, I pay off. And that's when, remember, we would go around the country showing this film where we could. And every time money would come in, pay off a label, pay off a publisher. And that's how we did it. It was really the people that did it.
That's great.
A musician, you remember, that's the other thing about musicians. I call them ants. They're like ants. They all come together, but then they break off and they go their different ways. And they were the best in terms of telling others about the project. And I would get people come up to me, oh man, I was on Elton's flight and I saw the film, or I was on the Eagles tour bus and I saw the film. I was on Paul Anka's bus and I saw the film. And I'm thinking, first of all, how's everybody seeing the film? There's bootlegs everywhere. It's like, oh my God. It used to irritate me at first, because I figured everybody's going to see this film. No one's going to want to see it again. All the musicians. And I remember the worst was a teacher at a NAMM show, and I'm with Don Randy, and I'm walking around with my shirt, and this guy goes, oh my God, I love that film. I teach at GIT, da 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 da. And he goes, I downloaded it and showed it to all my kids at school. And I'm thinking, I'm still in the trying to raise money to get this thing out. And I'm thinking, you're an idiot. You're an idiot, not because you did it. You're an idiot for telling me you did it.
Yeah.
So
Did he not know who you were? Did he not realize you were Denny
Yes.
Tedesco? He did.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the
He is
worst
an
thing,
idiot.
yeah, he's totally an idiot. But the worst thing was, my father, he wouldn't have had a job there, because my father, if you remember, in the mid 80s, MI was going down.
Yeah.
And,
Oh yeah. Yep.
and Pat Hicks went to everybody, the owner of the school, and said, trying to get money to keep going with payroll for 2 months. And everybody said, nope, 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 all of them. And he went to my father on a Sunday, and my father, who gambles, he's trying not to pay attention to Pat because he's watching the game. This is all in Pat's words. He says, your dad's sitting there in his underwear, which he always did. That's another story. But he's sitting there in his underwear on the couch. He's watching the game. And he goes, what do you need, Pat? He goes, well, and he tells him a story. We're short on payroll, da, da, da. He goes, let me think about it. It was like $50,000. And he goes, let me think about it. So the next day, he calls Pat up and says, everybody's told me not to do it. Carmi, his wife, my mother, don't do it. The accountant, everybody says, don't do it, don't do it. He says, but you know what? When they tell me not to do it, I'm going to do it. And he goes, so he knew, my father was smart. He knew if he's going to give up that 50 grand, it's going to keep the school going. He's going to make his money back.
Mhm.
You know, he was smart. He was a smart business guy.
Yeah.
But so
Yep.
that pay thing always cracked me up because the guy that's got the job 20 years later is because of the guy that gave that check
Yeah.
up. So
Yeah. No, I know. I know. I was just going to say, talking about those screenings, I was fortunate to go to several. And I remember the one you did at the NAMM show, maybe 10 or so years ago. You had it at the,
dude, no. You're way off. Think about it. 10 years
was it
ago?
more? Yeah, it must have been more than 10 years ago.
20 years ago.
Oh God, really? Oh man.
Well, oh 08 to 10, I'm showing 11. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I just remember
No,
the,
you're right. I can't add. I can't add. Sorry. I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot. Go
no,
on.
we all have,
Feels long.
we all have a little COVID.
Yeah, maybe I'll
It's
put
hard.
this hat back.
But anyway, I remember you gave me a bunch of passes that I was able to give out to artists and friends and people that, a bunch of us came to the screening. Hal was there, and you of course emceed, and I had so many people that my coworkers at Zildjian hadn't seen it yet, so it was their first time, and it was just so cool to see the reactions on people's faces because, I mean, right from the opening, first downbeat, it's like the "Be My
Yeah,
Baby" intro,
yeah.
and then I think it
Bump,
kicks over to Dick Clark or to Brian Wilson or somebody. It's just like, or Glenn Campbell, and it's like, oh my God, this is unbelievable.
It's in you. It's funny. It's in your face all the way through.
Yeah.
And it's funny, but you remember how many times people would say, I just saw this 2 weeks ago and you cut it differently. And I said, no. And what would happen is people be hearing this music or hearing a story and they're thinking about that song, maybe because it affected them. That was their high school song. And all of a sudden they forgot the next 5 minutes. They're
Yeah.
still thinking, and that happened a lot. I know they're not, it was an accident, obviously, but I watched it all the time happen. And that was the power of music.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah. Yep.
that was really powerful, watching
And
the audiences groove.
exactly. And I was going to say, I totally know what you're talking about too. And I think that happens when, like you say, when parts of a movie or a film resonate with you and your mind goes off there, so that, like you say, you watch it again 2 weeks later and you don't have a recollection of what came where. So when you see
Yeah,
this next bit, you think either that wasn't there before, or I thought that was toward the end. You move that part,
yeah.
Yeah, it's
It was it was so interesting watching that film with audiences, and you know, I had no fun. It's funny once I started watching with real audiences, and I say real audiences meaning like not here or New York. I mean, insiders. It was so cool to watch because people really responded. Um, and I said this, and if this again was part of it was by accident, you know, you don't know what you're going to do, but music, you had them by 50%. 50%, if you hit with the music,
yeah.
unless you really hate all that music, you're not going to have a fun time either way. But it was, at least you sucked them in that way. But the other things about the film that I didn't realize meant so much to people, the storylines of these guys, because for those who don't, again, if you haven't seen it, spoiler alert, my dad dies. But he dies at the beginning and he dies at the end. So, and I say that because when I started the film, that was the that's why I was making it. When I found out he was diagnosed with cancer, I jumped into that thing really quickly. I always wanted to tell that story, but I thought if I don't do it, it's going to be that thing. I should have. I should have asked. I should have done it, and I didn't want that, so I did it. And once I got going in the edit, I never wanted to be part of the film. I just wanted to direct it and produce it. And an editor director, um, he said to me, "Why are you doing it like this?" What do you mean? I said, "We had 20 minutes cut." He says, "Why are you not telling? You're not including yourself." I said, "I don't want to be in it." He said, "No, no, you got to. You're coming from a different perspective that none of us can come from. You're
Right.
you're involved, and you're not sharing that." And part of it, the truth was, it was my ego not wanting to do it, because it is exactly what happened. Not exactly, but I knew that was going to be the case. Is people would say, "Oh, it's the son of Tommy. He did it." Oh, how
Right.
sweet.
Yeah.
I was in the film business. I might not have been a director, but I was production. I was gripping. I did, IMAX and all that. So it
Yeah.
wasn't like I didn't know what it was. I had my friends help me. So when we started making that change of adding my voice in the beginning and just a few things here and there, and I was able to come up. It was easier for me to tell the story. So
Yeah.
what happened is, when you were screening that film, I saw people relating it to a few reasons. They've lost their parents, or they're losing their parents, or they are parents and they're thinking about where their careers are. The two best lines in the film come from Bones Howe, the great engineer, producer, and
Hmm.
drummer. And he said, I asked, what was it like when you guys were you were the A team, late, mid 60s, they're doing everything.
Yeah.
Um, I said, you're at the top. What happens when you're not at the top? And I know what answers are coming from my dad's perspective. So I could only go thinking what he would have done. And Bones said, you know what? He goes, I had that ramp. We were all in the minors going up. Took the ramp up at the top. We had that longevity at the top, and then we had the ramp down. He goes, it's not about staying at the top. It's about taking that ramp down as long as possible. And boy,
What a
that
great, yeah.
any of us. And even I thought about it. It's like, um, Mark Maron, who's in an interview with me, he said, when I told him that, he goes, yeah, because we all want to be relevant as long as possible.
Right.
And it's true. We all want to be relevant. My mom wanted to be relevant. Even if in her old age she still had advice for you. Do you know what I mean? You
Yeah.
want to be relevant. And the other line was from Plaz Johnson, the saxophone player. And I said, Plaz, what was it like for the family? Again, I know where I can come. I can answer that for us. But for Plaz, he says, well, and he paused. I said, how did it affect your family? He goes, well, let's just say I'm a better grandfather than I was a father. And he's because, his kids are going to school at 8 o'clock in the morning. He might be sleeping in because he worked on the Merv Griffin show, and he doesn't go to work till 3. He doesn't come home till 11 or whatever.
Hmm.
So he misses the family. But now that doesn't have to be a musician. You could be a postman, you could be a salesman. We all have to try to provide. And that's the thing. We do whatever we can.
Yeah.
And in the next film that I'm doing called The Immediate Family, and it was about a guy like Russ Kunkel and Leland and Danny Kochmar and Waddy Wachtel. I asked that question. Asked Russ Kunkel. I said, and he goes, there's a point where the biggest regret he didn't spend enough time at home. Meaning, like, it was he had to provide, and that's how you do it.
Hmm.
He goes, but there's a point where you have to say no. And I've had to learn that as a father. Man, maybe this trip isn't worth it. Or maybe, you know, there's a birthday. I'm going to stay. I can't do that,
Yeah.
or whatever. But, you have to think about
That's,
it.
that's,
But you have
yeah,
to
that's,
provide.
and
Parents have to provide.
it's that kind of yin and yang situation of like you say, and people talk a lot about that balance, that balance of, like you say,
Yeah.
providing for your family, but having that time with your family too. And I man, this is about you, not about me, but I can totally relate to
No,
missing
you
kids'
do. I
birthdays.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah, it's all those
you know,
things. Well, since
you
you
know,
brought it up, Denny, maybe can you talk for a minute about the about that project, the immediate family.
Yeah,
That's in process now. You're working on that.
yeah, yeah. So after Wrecking Crew came out in 2015, it did really, really well. It went to Netflix, Hulu, and all over the world and stuff. So I was really happy. Um, but then projects people would say, "What about this? What about this?" And there's always everybody. There's listen, so many musicians and so many groups of musicians easily could have a documentary about them,
Hmm.
and well deserved. I mean, there's so many stories out there, but there was no way I was going to fund another documentary. There would have been a bullet behind my head right now with my wife. She's not a gun owner, but she would have taken it up or find another way. But there was no way we would take this family down that road. So, and then a couple of years ago, these producers, Greg Rishley, who's a bass player, was a bass player for Wallflowers, and Jack Pyatt and John Sheldon, they came to me and said, would you be interested in a documentary? We're talking about maybe doing a documentary on the Section. And I kind of briefly knew what the Section was, but not really. I knew the names of the guys.
Mhm.
And Leland I knew. And the Section was basically a group of musicians that were doing the singer-songwriters at the beginning, like with Jackson and James and Carol. And it was Leland Sklar, Russ Kunkel, Danny Kochmar, and Craig Durkee, who was a piano player at the time. But right now, Leland, Russ, and Waddy, and Danny, they have a band with another guy named Steve Pistel, and it's called Immediate Family. And when they told me that, I thought, okay, I got that. I understand it now. Because when I say I understand it, now I got a hook on this. Because it's not just another group of musicians. And the hook is basically, these guys have been playing for 50 plus years with each other, and they are family. And as you know, and a lot of musicians know, and other occupations, you become closer to your work family because you spend more time, especially the road guys. And they're in the studios for this time, and then go on the road for months. It's a whole different relationship. So I thought, okay, this is cool. And then I started, and then we all of a sudden they raised money, and I was like, uh-oh, in 3 weeks, you got Carole King. Oh shit. Okay. Now I really
Wow.
gotta be serious because now there's money involved. And now I gotta go. If they don't pay you, they can't bitch.
Right.
Right?
Right. But when they
You
pay
get what
you,
you pay
yeah.
for. So now they gotta pay me. All right. So Carole King is in 3 weeks. We do Carole King. This is all pre-COVID. And then they said Linda Ronstadt and can be done in 2 weeks. And then James Taylor next week. And I'm like, what? So all of a sudden this is happening like boom, 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 boom. And I still don't have the real story down. Do you know what I mean? I'm still like,
Yeah.
it's not like it's in your head. You're researching it. You're trying to learn it as you go along. And I guess in some ways that's kind of cool because you discover as you go along. And that was one of my discoveries when I interviewed Peter Asher, the great producer.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, there was something about, we were talking about legends, and I realized, oh my God, these guys weren't legends. When they're doing Tapestry and Sweet Baby James, they're nobodies. That's,
Right.
Leland's first gig on the road is Sweet Baby James, and Danny, and Russ are doing, Russ's first 3 albums is Blue, Tapestry, and Sweet Baby James within 2 years. It's crazy.
Unbelievable.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but they're not legends. And that was like blew my mind because I consider them legends. They became legends, so that was kind of nice. And I've been following them. They have this band, and when COVID hit, I saw so many other people just give up, musically or different, just walk away. These guys, man, they just kept doing it. Meaning not getting together every week and they were really safe. Every week they would stay on their computers and they would connect with each other, and they would write music and they'd send it to each other, and they start recording it that way. And they came out with an album, and they came out with videos that are killer videos.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, where other people, as you get older, you get kind of like, you don't want to. And even myself, it's like, do I really want to learn this now at 60? And these guys are killing it. I mean, I'm not talking about musically; they're killing it musically, but they're
Yeah.
also just
The
focused.
technology and all that stuff too,
Yeah,
right? Like embracing the tools that are available that,
yeah,
like you say, a lot of guys our age kind of go, yeah.
yeah. And it's funny because, especially in your world, the drum world, were the first to get hit. When the drum machines came in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then who was it? Mike Bars told me, he goes, he remembers when he and Jeff Carl were hanging out and someone brought over a drum machine and Jeff said, throw that thing in the pool, drown it, Something like that. I can't remember how this story went, but it's like, oh my God.
Yeah. I could
It's
hear
like,
Jeff say that. Yeah.
it's like, can you imagine? I mean, but some guys, embraced it and
Right.
took it and used it as a tool. And that's how
And
these.
I think Jeff, in the end, he did it, but
Yeah.
you're right. Yeah. But that was, I think a lot of the people's first reaction was like, oh no, not this, that's,
Yeah.
this ain't cool. But no,
Yeah.
but I'm excited about this project because, as you say, I mean, the immediate family is kind of our generation. I mean, your dad, of course, and Hal and the Wrecking
Right.
Crew, we were kids. But I think of
Look,
all that music
totally
those
different.
guys made.
And it's
Yeah.
funny because it's a totally different world, and that's the other thing. How are they different than the Wrecking Crew? All right. Easily. They're all of them amazing musicians. There's no doubt about it. Great musicians. You can't do that. But the thing is, when my father comes in and they're kicking it, Hal and Dad and Don and Carol and Joe and all of them are killing it in the mid 60s. They've already been going for a few years. But don't forget, in the 60s, when they're doing Spectre stuff, it's one track, it's mono. So they're basically, they're going in for 3-hour sessions. 3-hour session, moving to the next one, moving to the next one. They're in a factory.
Yeah.
Part of it is, labels didn't want to spend money. They wanted in and out, in and out. It was a financial thing. When labels started realizing, if they spend more time or these albums can make money, they're going to take their time. So producers are now doing, as Earl Palmer said, he goes, in the 60s, we were doing recording dates. In the 70s, they were projects. And you were doing a week, you're doing 2 weeks. You come back and forth on an album.
Yeah.
You didn't do that in the 60s. You nailed an album in 2 days, 1 day sometimes. He said Liberty Records, one of their labels, 6 tunes in the morning, 6 tunes in the evening, and that's how it went down. Now, these guys come along, they're also young, befriending the artist. Carol and Danny are best friends. They're not best friends, but whatever. They're great friends at that point. So they're hanging out. They're, Linda, they're all hanging out. They're, troubadours, whatever, but they're making music together.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's the difference is they befriend them. They go on the road with them to play the music they just recorded. In the 60s, the Wrecking Crew never did it. Hal occasionally did it. Sometimes they did it, but they had to pay those guys a lot of money to go on the road. You did not want to walk away from your chair, because someone else is going to fill it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got 8 guitar players. There's 8 great guys that could play Telecaster. It's bullshit music, most of it. You know what I mean? So you didn't do that. And the other thing was the bands in the 60s that were on the road, they couldn't do what these guys were doing, in the studio, the Wrecking Crew.
Right.
You didn't have that problem with the next generation. They're more educated, better players in a sense. They can go off and do it. So that's why. So when you got Leland and Scalara, who could go from studio doing Mike Post stuff, and then doing um, Spectrum album,
Right.
and then doing Linda or whoever. I mean, these guys are amazing,
Yeah.
and then they go off in the same thing with these guys as my. I said, what's it like? There's a point where everybody has a change in direction. For my father, when his career in records, and I say comes to an end, is really late 60s, early 70s. And I say that because things are changing. Now he gets called for movies and TV. Because of his reading skills, his capability was ridiculous. He could go on and do that. And now he gets called for, mandolin or bouzouki or some crazy ass instrument for the studio. Now there's a difference. He's doing that, let's say, for Love Boat. Well, but you got, um, oh my God, how did I go blank? This is live. David Lindley,
Yeah. Oh
who's,
gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
know, brilliant. He's like a brilliant guitar player with all that shit.
Yeah.
But my dad's not doing what he's doing, and he's not doing what my dad's doing because they're both two different things, two different worlds. He's literally legit. My dad's getting close. When he's doing Love Boat, he doesn't have to be, tuning all his instruments to their natural, natural tuning. He doesn't care. He's tuning like a guitar. So these guys are different. But God, they're this group of musicians, Danny and Leland and Russ and Waddy. I mean, crack me up, man. They're brothers.
Yeah.
They're a
Yeah.
family. He's like all of them.
Well, and
So
I have to think that they would say that the guys in the immediate family would say that if it wasn't for the Wrecking Crew, they probably wouldn't have. I mean, they would have had careers because they're all, as you say,
yeah, yeah,
phenomenal A-listers. But I think, is it fair to say that the business evolved from what the Wrecking Crew had built to sort
absolutely.
of, yeah, allow this new kind
Yeah,
of way?
I think so. Absolutely. And you know, it's funny because Danny, and it's funny how they never met. I don't think Dad and I think they worked on one project together with Lou Adler, but um, two different animals. Danny doesn't like three hour set. I don't like. I'm not into the 10 to 1 and 2 to 5 and blah, 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 and he bitches about it, right? Totally, yeah. My father didn't give a shit. I don't really, I wish I could ask him,
Yeah.
but what I remember is, you're paying me, I'll be there.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you're not he wasn't such a whore, or not that way. His job is to do the best he can for you. And if you're paying me $25, and I'm going to give you, all out, da 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 da. And he goes, that was the question that they would ask him. Did you ever feel like you were shafted for, you guys didn't have arrangements or something? You had to come up with your own stuff. He goes, no. He goes, every time, and we made hundreds of hits,
Yeah.
but we made thousands of bombs. I never gave anybody their money back. You know, you're going in there. You're not going to hold back. You're going to give them 110%.
Yep.
I don't know if my dad would have had the patience to hang out to do albums for weeks on weeks. I mean, I know there were projects that major projects that he did like that. A huge orchestra concerto with guitar. But that was weeks, and that was different. But I don't know if he would have had the patience to hang out
That's a
like
really
that.
good point, Danny. Yeah, exactly. I think I didn't know your dad, but knowing the the work ethic that he had and Hal and all the guys had in the Wrecking Crew, that they were conditioned to go in and hit it and do it
Yeah,
like you say, in a day, in a session, they bang out a bunch of hits, and they probably would have went a little crazy even if they were getting paid to sit around for
yeah,
a couple of weeks. I
yeah.
would
You're
bet.
playing the same music, playing the
Yeah.
same. you're doing an album and it's taking you a month, 2 months. What are you gonna maybe record 20 songs, whatever it is? These guys, dad would go in, do 3 or 4 songs in 3 hour session. If you did 3 or 4 sessions that day, and that could be, 12 pieces of music in one day that you didn't even see and never see again,
Yeah.
and the next day was something different. So, and everybody was different, there were different musicians constantly changing in and out.
Right. So how far, I shouldn't say how far along,
Yeah.
any idea how
Yeah. I'm
how
hoping, cross our fingers. Put in a cut to the sales team last week. So we want to get notes back from them. Um, we haven't shown it to the guys yet. If they're listening, sorry guys. Um, because we really want to get it right. And I don't want to be messing with everybody's heads. Like, I want to get as close as possible. And so I'm hoping that within this year, it'll be out probably, even if it was perfect right now, it'll probably be at the end of the year, because it takes time to get things into the loop of distribution.
Sure, yeah.
But, immediate family film is our Facebook page. There's Media Family, and then there's Media Family Film. So
Okay.
we're constantly doing what do you call it? You know, information trivia and new stuff coming up. But no,
Oh,
I'm proud of it. It was, I'm scared because, it's my second one, and it's the first one, I'll be judged, which is fine. We're always judged. But I really feel we're telling their story. And again, they don't hold back.
yeah.
They don't, that's what the great thing is. These musicians, none of them hold back. They tell the truth. Oh God, they're funny. They,
I
I
can't
can't
wait to
even tell you
see.
the stories now because it's those stories that you're telling about Wrecking Crew. They'll hopefully in years. Do you remember that story that Waddy talked about? Or
Yeah. No, I'm
yeah,
so happy for you. You know what? I know as sure as the sun will rise tomorrow that it's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic because you know what you're doing. You
yeah,
have
I
integrity.
hope.
Yeah, no, you have, Denny. It's going to be great. And you've always been a humble man, so I expect nothing less from you saying that you hope it's
It's
going to be
hard.
good.
It's hard not to be humble when you got. I can't play an instrument. I suck as actor. Yeah, very humble.
Well,
Um,
you're a better director than anybody I know, so
oh wow, there you go. You
you
don't
get
get
that
out
going for
much.
me.
That's all.
Oh man. Well,
What's happening in NAM? Is there NAM this year? Anybody know? I'm scared now. I know. Thanks.
man,
I
my
want a
throat's,
glass of water.
yeah, I always have to keep the water handy. Well, I can tell you that I do know they have NAM scheduled for June of next year.
Oh,
Not
we're skipping January. Oh,
they're
smart.
pushing it. Yeah, they're pushing it back to June. It's
Okay.
going to be, I think like the first week, and it's going to be 3 days instead of the usual 4 days. And
I was just thinking of Hal. That was the other thing. Hal. Oh God, he
uh,
bitch. He would bitch, 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 bitch,
I
and they
know.
would go to, and that was the other thing. And it's not that it's the same jokes. Yes, he had thousands of jokes he'd come up with, but as he always at Nam, he was always like, "Ah." He loved to love.
He
That's the
did.
thing. But he was a curmudgeon. He pretended to be a certain, he was, God damn, it's a petri dish there. It's a petri dish. And he would
That's
always
right.
get sick.
Yeah.
No matter what, Hal was always sick in February after the Nam show. Whether or not it was a cold or whether it was
Yeah.
psychosomatic, I don't know, but it was always that petri dish. And it was so funny.
I
And
I think it's because everybody wanted to shake his hand and hug
oh,
him
totally,
and yeah and
totally.
I yeah
And it was so funny. It was like in the same, and the other thing is musicians, you guys do it all the time because you're doing the same show all the time. You know what I mean? So
yeah
you're
yeah
doing an opening, you probably tell a joke, and the guy, the drummer's going, "Fuck, I've heard this joke every time for 5 years." And that's how I was with Hal. It's like realize every time we would do a screening, and Hal would start, with what's the hardest thing for a studio player? A job, parking space. It's the same old
Right.
joke.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, you know, and the funny thing is, there were so many things that we would, when Hal and Don and I would travel, we had those moments where Don and I are on one page. We know what we got to do because, as some of us know, and it's not hidden, Hal and Carol did not get along at those later years.
Yeah.
Extremely, it was unfortunate and it was true. And the worst was at a screening, and Carol would get on screen and Hal would talk to the screen. Basically, say shit to the screen. It was like, oh my God, Hal, please don't.
Uh,
And so then after that, once or twice, that was it. So for the next 5 years, hey, Hal, let's go get something to eat. Hey, Hal, let's go get something to eat. As soon as we did the opening, we get Hal out of there before she came on screen. And it was so funny. And he never knew. He never knew why we were always eating during the movie. Um, and then the other one was, he got to the point where he was, he was a horrible driver you know, and like many of our parents are,
yeah.
as my kid would say about me now. But Don and I would go to his house in Palm Springs for lunch, and Hal would take us to the deli or whatever. But I would always park in front of his driveway so that he couldn't pull out the caddy. I go, hey, Hal, I'll drive. No, I'll drive. No, not Hal. I get the car. Come on, let's go. It's like,
Smart move, Denny.
oh
Smart.
man, I learned
Yeah.
that was saved my life probably. So how
Oh,
would he get out
God
of
bless.
it?
God
So
bless him. I will say
yeah.
I remember that screening at the NAM show, whenever that was, 2008 or whatever,
Oh yeah.
2010. He afterward
Oh,
you had him come up and
we
talk
do the
about
Q
it.
and A afterward.
Did the Q&A exactly. And
Yeah. Oh,
God bless you, man, because I watched you and you were kind of going like, because he was kind of going off
I'm
on
trying. I
Hal
mean,
and
he's
yeah.
got the microphone, and there's nothing worse, And he was venting, and it
Yeah.
was like I'm trying to get the mic, trying to get the mic. So we learned.
Yeah. Yeah.
You learn once, you learn twice. The third, it's your own problem, you know. But no, I was, these guys were. I love those guys, and I miss them dearly. But they never left. The fact that these little stories and memories, as you do this with all these musicians that you like, Rick and Steve Gadd and Peter Erskine, all those guys, and Russ, and that's the greatest thing about your job is being able to talk to them. And my job, it's so much fun,
Yeah.
just
And
talking to
and I'm
people.
I'm so glad that you're documenting all this stuff and thank you. And I'm trying to do a little part of that as well, just to sort of. I wish I could have done something like this with Hal. I mean, it's been done. You
Yeah.
did it, and so
You know,
thankfully there's plenty out there. And but
well, I tell people, it, do it with your parents. Do it with
yeah,
your parents, your grandparents. This stupid phone has more power and better camera than I had when I did any of my documentary. You know
right,
what I mean? It's amazing,
yeah,
and it's like you don't have to make a documentary. You just grab the information. And grab it and just talk to them. Um, People want to talk usually,
yeah,
and you'll learn a lot. And it's like, give it to your kids. I just got hooked on that show, uh, Roots Revealed or something. It's the PBS show where
hmm
they go back looking at, like stars, Roots, like who was it? Jim Gaffigan, and there was somebody else, and they went back. Oh, Michael Moore, the
oh
documentary maker.
yeah,
They traced his roots all the way back to the 1600s in America, and go, my God, how cool to be able to go, what I mean, to be able
yeah,
to find your lineage. I wonder,
that's
like,
yeah,
okay, in 100 years, will my lineage go? Yeah, he's I don't know. Somewhere I read that he was a documentary maker. I don't know, you know, but at least, they'll know where they come from.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's important. I think if it's not important, it's fun. It's interesting. So
I think it is too. I think it is too. Well, we've been going for a while, and
thank you.
I want to do this again. I'm gonna get in touch with you after the holidays, and I would love to do
Yeah, well,
something.
as soon as I have, would be great. As soon as I have something to show you with the media family, a trailer or something, I'd love to share it and get Russ on and Leland on and
That'd
Danny
be
and the
great.
guys. And I'm telling you, they kept me going for the last 2 years. So, and be safe with COVID, guys. Please be safe. It's
Yeah.
not over. It might never be over, but you know what? Don't be stupid and just let's love each other.
Amen.
You know?
Yeah, I
Even
agree.
if it's even love each other with a mask. It's sexier.
That's right. Uh,
I is that
absolutely.
eyes wide shut? It's a way of keeping eyes wide shut.
All
Um,
right.
and then don't forget HBO. Go
Yeah.
do a like. And
Like the
uh,
Wrecking Crew, and watch it.
yeah, yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, my friend.
Oh,
Hang tight for one
thank-
sec. I'll end the
yeah.
live stream and then I'll come back and see you in a second. But
Okay.
a big hand for my very good friend Denny Tedesco. I hope
Thanks,
everybody
man.
enjoyed it. My pleasure, Denny. Thank you.
All right.
Love you, buddy.
See ya.
All right, hold on one sec. See you.